Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of GeekVerse podcast. I am your host, Taylor Field. I am solo today. No one else joined me for this wonderful movie that we're going to be talking into spoilers today, Renfield. A couple of plugs before we get into that, however. You can find us with your internet connection in the search bar. GeekVerse.ca is our home base. GeekVerseCast is our Twitter, and Geekverse is our Facebook. So be sure to check us out also on our Patreon. We can get ad-free, early, exclusive content drop in there. It is fantastic. We got a ton of exclusive shows that are not available on our main feeds, including retrospectives. Right now, we're doing the X-Men retrospective. We're going to be having the Indiana Jones retros popping off on there. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that is going to be jumping your way soon on those feeds. I also have a massive shout out. Massive. These folks are fantastic. The Patreon producers. Aaron Braden, April of Darkness, Joshua Wright, and Jack Grant. You folks are fantastic. Thank you so much for supporting us on this show. Everything you do is wonderful. Okay, now, what else is going on? We have side quests popping off weekly. We have, again, we're doing a Renfield review right now. What happened next week? Evil Dead, Beau Afraid is still up in the air. We're going to see if maybe it's going to pop in one of our theaters. It's not looking like it is, which is very peculiar. So, nonetheless, you will have an Evil Dead Rise review coming your way. On top of that, the Mando finale is going to be next week, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be a good, juicy review. Yeah, I believe that's basically it. So without further ado, let's get into some non-spoilers first for Renfield. Now, I went in a little bit excited here. Again, we're going to be seeing Nicolas Cage. It's going to be playing Dracula. It's going to be some good times. And I was much more pleasantly surprised than I thought I would be. The level of violence is actually very, very wacky and wild, and I think that's where a lot of the budget for this film actually went. Now, while some blood and stuff was very much on point, there was a lot of other scenes that looked very CGI, but not in a negative way, I dare say. I feel like it was very much in a flamboyantly owning up to the fact that this is a very cheesy, over-the-top film, and they took advantage of that. So some of those more bloodier sequences actually really worked for me. The fighting, the choreography was great. Some scenes were very, very quick and like cut and flash to the next action sequence and stuff like that. But all in all, I think the fighting was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Is it John Wick level? No, but it's it's Dracula level. Um, I think Nicholas Hoult did a fantastic job in this as well. Nick Cage, of course, did a fantastic job. Everyone really brought it to the table, I dare say. I really like Awkwafina's character, Ben Schwartz as well. That was a good time, and I had no idea. And I hope I am pronouncing her name right. Shore Agdashlo. Travis would just be killing me right now. She's a fantastic actress. She's going to be in Assassin's Creed Mirage, playing as one of the mentors. She is just fantastic. I had no idea that she was in this film, so that was a pleasant surprise as well. Yeah, and all in all, like the soundtrack released too on Spotify. I was listening to that actually earlier today, and I was really enjoying the tunes and going back into this world. But I think that this film, all in all, it understood what it was going to be doing, and it owned up to it, and it really delivered. I was laughing audibly at times, and I think the vampire gimmick and the rules, when you can make a fun spin on that, it really does deliver, at least for me. And I think this film really provided that. So I will absolutely be going back to rewatching this. Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into some spoilers now. So if you have not seen the film, put me on pause. Go to the theater, watch this movie, and then come on back and we're going to get into it in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So Nicholas Holt's character, I'm sure if you've seen the previews, you know, okay, he's not feeling it. He wants to break free, be his own guy, get his life back into his control, and stop serving and up people to Nicolas Cage's Dracula. And it starts off with a very, very cool setting with black and white, and you see him. He's just an up-and-coming real estate agent trying to make big on getting into business here with the Count, and it takes place back in the ages there. And you get kind of a little bit of backstory of Nicholas Hoult becoming his familiar, and then them just kind of avoiding people, and then, you know, killing people, moving from place to place to place, and just kind of getting ultimately to where they are now. And I believe it was, I want to say, was it New Orleans? I can't remember the name that was on Aquafina's police vest. I digress. So Nicholas Hoult gives this whole kind of backstory, and it's very cool to kind of see them through the ages, starting that retro horror movie vibe, and that's where I think Nicolas Cage really cemented it as Count Dracula. He really just came out on top. And then we kind of transitioned to the last of this group of hunters and the church trying to take him down, and Nicholas Hoult breaks the salt circle and ultimately seals this deal with Nicolas Cage. And it just kind of alludes more to him being in this self-help group where they're just saying, hey, toxic relationships, there's someone in your life that's just got you, beating you down, and is just taking you, but you have the power and you can, live for yourself, not someone else. And I think that dynamic was really, really funny with Nicolas Cage's Dracula. It led to some really funny moments when Nicholas Holt's character gets this book, just to kind of like, I can't remember what it was called, but boosting yourself up. You won't tolerate like a narcissistic attitudes from people being negative in your life, specifically in this case, Count Dracula. And when Dracula is trying to figure out, okay, like what is going on with Renfield here? He's not doing what he should be doing. So he goes to Renfield's place because Renfield is like, yeah, I'm going to get an apartment. I'm going to start up new here because, in short, he took out some bad guys, saved Aquafina's life, and now he's feeling really good about himself, like he's a hero. And he does have powers. He has to eat insects to get these powers. But so he rents his own place. He's in there. And I wanted to specifically hone in on this right away because this really cracks me up. Is when he opens the door, Dracula is sitting in there sipping his blood out of his martini glass. Which Nicolas Cage just kills it as Dracula. Holy shit, he really does. So he's in there, and Renfield, he walks in surprised, and then he turns back and looks at his welcome mat, and it says, welcome, come on in. And he just gets so pissed, like, oh no. I invited him in, and I love that. Again, that's one of the first plays on the rules with Dracula and vampires, and that just really cracks me up. When Dracula has this whole conversation here with Nicholas Holt's character and understands, like, okay, who's been putting these ideas into your head? He looks at the book of how to stop narcissistic attitudes directed towards you and stuff that Renfield handed him, and sees on the back like property of the so and so church. And he's like, oh, of course, it's the church. So he goes to the church. The door swings open. Renfield's he beat Dracula there. He gets there. He's like telling everyone, like, we gotta go. And they're like, no, you don't have to. It's fine. The door swings open. It just makes me laugh. It's slow motion. Dracula's standing outside, and the leader of this group is like, oh, you here for the group? Well, come on in. And Renfield's like, no. You see Dracula just waltz in. He's got his top hat on. He's got his cane. He's looking absolutely mint. And yeah, he's going around. He's being all cheeky, and there's mannerisms here where you can actually touch upon that crazy Nick Cage from, I dare say, Spirit of Vengeance, in his mannerisms and the way he's yelling and exerting himself and his energy. And one of the things too he does is very cheeky, like, oh, some people called me the Lord of Death, others called me the Dark One. Woo! And he giggles and puts his pointy ass fingers up to his mouth. He's got razor sharp shark teeth. No one seems to be bothered by that, but he's just being so cheeky in this role, and I love it. Well, we first got to see him in his hospital lair in present day with Renfield. Renfield is bringing him some bad guys because ultimately Renfield goes to these support groups, not necessarily for himself. It transitioned into that, but initially he was going there so he could kind of get a read on bad people in these other good people's lives and bring those bad people to Dracula to be eaten. And the downside to that is these bad people aren't pure, and Dracula needs pure blood people, I guess you could say. Pure blood, pure of spirit and soul is the right term for that. So Dracula gets pissed because he wants, the busload of cheerleaders or a whole group of nuns and all that jazz. And so you see Dracula, and this is where I think a lot of the budget did go to, was the practicality of the use of prosthetic effects and such. Is he looked fantastic. He was all burned, decayed, and he just looked incredible. Every time we go back to him, he gets a little bit more human looking and all that jazz, but absolutely was fantastic. And he just, I wasn't even sure if it was Nick Cage at first, and he just started to exert these tendencies that he's done and these mannerisms from previous acting films. Like, oh, okay, where he's getting kooky, and you can tell it there. They're talking about like, oh, you want cheerleaders to all be girls? And he's like, no, no, it's not a sexuality thing. It doesn't matter, just cheerleaders. It's just he just needs that pure spirit and to drink of that blood. So as the story progresses, obviously we have Aquafina's character who is fantastic. She's got some inner dilemma going on where everyone in her police district precinct are basically thinking like, okay, you got to leave these crime people alone, the Lobos. So you have Teddy Lobo and Ella Lobo, and they are running things here. They're running the show, and Aquafina basically wants to take them down, but she's just stuck on doing traffic cop duty. Her sister is an FBI agent, and basically her father was a amazingly uncorruptible cop, but the Lobos killed him for that. So when she manages to save the day with Renfield helping save her life and save the day, the Lobos target both of them and come down on them. And now we have this adventure kind of unwinding here where through a series of unfortunate events, because the Lobos got a great amount of technology. And Ben Schwartz was really good in this. Again, he's voiced Sonic, and he's in Parks and Rec as well. So it was cool to see him pop off in here. This is the shitty, stupid little crime boss son, and he's just being a doofus. And so when he encounters Dracula, and then Dracula is having a falling out with Renfield, and then kind of goes in to join up with Ben Schwartz's Lobo crime syndicate, that's when things get really interesting, just like this ad break. And we're back. So when you look at how the relationship starts to unfold here, Teddy Lobo's like, oh, come on, you got to meet my mom. It's all about the mom. So they bring in Dracula in this coffin, bring him up to Ella Lobo here, and they have a very like cool conversation. And it's very neat because now Dracula's plan is like, hey, I'm going to take over the world domination. And he's just got this map with all the red lines, and he's got the White House and everything. And it's just as a Dracula and with Renfield included on a sticky note that he put there. So that was great. However, Renfield doesn't want that. So Dracula moves on. Okay, Teddy Lobo, let's make you guys familiars. And so he makes all of these individuals familiars. And now this is when we learn, okay, now he's teamed up with the Lobos. The Lobos have been paying off all these cops, including Aquafina's boss, the head of the detachment. So now she is really stuck in the situation where she finds out the truth from Nicholas Holt's Renfield. And I thought that there'd be more betrayal here with Aquafina in terms of her family and her sister, who is in the FBI. Not the case, though. But the FBI and the cops and the Lobos, they all gather together to try and take down Aquafina and Renfield here. So we get a crazy fight scene. And again, there's some crazy shit that goes down. Like we saw in the trailer, obviously, the decapitation of the guy's forearms. But when Renfield and Rebecca Quincy were together here, and they were leaving the apartment of Renfield, and the cops, everyone show up, you get a brutal scene where Renfield like grabs this cop's arms, kicks the cop back, and the cop's like arms rip off of him. Renfield like turns, sees Aquafina being pinned up by two guys. He throws one of these arms, and it stabs the one cop and pins him into the wall. He dies. Then Renfield throws the other arm, does the same thing to the other guy. Could not believe it. And this is where you really see the excessive use of the CGI blood. The fact that Renfield like jumps off this guy jumps off the upper level of the apartment. Aquafina is dangling off the side of the railing. This guy has her gun, and he's kind of like leaning back out off the railing as Aquafina's leaning over the railing, trying to just counter her weight and just get the guy off of her. So Renfield jumps down. He lands feet first onto the guy's chest, and they make it look like he just snaps in half, like he just explodes of blood. Oh my God, so much blood. So when he lands and pushes the guy into the ground, there's just a pile of like 20 bodies, and blood explodes everywhere. And then, I mean, you could see the fact that they toned it down. It was just an excessive use of flamboyant CGI blood. But they really chalked that up to a very humorous moment in that sequence, which I did appreciate. I thought it was very funny. After that, we have them going to the Lobos' place of business, and this is where we learn, okay, the Lobos are turned into familiars now. All the other crime goons are all turned into familiars, and we get a crazy kick-ass fight sequence with them. And Ben Schwartz goes out in a horrendous way. It was very cool. It's like Mortal Kombat, though, because Renfield kicks Teddy Lobo right in the chest. Uh, and you see an interior shot, like X-ray, of all the bones breaking in his body. And then you see everything like combust, and shit shoots out of his ass and blood shoots out of his mouth, and he just poofs. It's oh my goodness. Don't take your kids to see that one in this movie. This is definitely a little bit more, a youth 16-year-old film, I dare say. So that was just absolutely peachy. Again, that's the end of Teddy Lobo's character. He did have some funny dialogue, but it was very, very brief, though, with Renfield. When they're fighting, it's like, I'm the yin to your yang, and Renfield's like, I barely even know you. So there was some humorous stuff in there. After that, we get to the point where Awkwafina is going to basically, it's alluded that she's going to join Dracula, and you're thinking, oh no. Renfield's thinking, oh no, this isn't good. She doesn't do that. She's just kind of pretending and faking to join him while she tries to open up the blinds in this room to just burn him, which they successfully do. And they chase after him because he turns into bat form, and he goes into a deeper part of the Lobo's base of operations. And we got a very crazy fight sequence. It's very, very cool. Dracula is just looking more rough around the edges. Awkwafina, there's a bunch of cocaine, and she creates a protection circle out of cocaine, and they trap Dracula in there because they read off the proper words to do it off of a Wiccan Tumblr, which I thought was really funny. So they trap Dracula in a cocaine barrier, and they get all these crazy archaic weapons off the walls, and they just saw him up. And this was crazy because I love how Renfield's just like, I've seen him come back some really fucked up ways, and he'll probably come back from this, but it'll be a long time before he does. They smash him up. They cut him up, they grind him up, they mix him into little bits of cement. They put the cement into ice cube trays, so they've made him into like dozens and dozens and dozens of ground up ice cubes, cement cubes actually made out of trays, and then they pour that all throughout the city down in the sewers and stuff like that. I don't know why they should do that. I feel like they should have put it and locked it up in like 50 different safes and put those safes, drop them all around the ocean. I think that would be a little bit better than all the cubes in one sewer grate together. That just seems kind of blunt. But anyways, I'm not looking at realism here for this movie. So after they do that, they did manage to harvest a lot of his blood as they were performing these great operations on Dracula. And so they use the blood to basically help revive a few people that have been at risk throughout this film, like Awkwafina's sister. She got injured, but they used Dracula's blood to mend her. Everyone in Renfield's self-help group that Dracula strutted in there and killed, they used the blood to kill him, revive everyone there. And they joked on that, where he's like, oh, I've seen some things. We've all seen some things, and we've come back. It's very weird, but there's really no consequences that you necessarily feel in this movie. It feels very much like hunky-dory, everything will pan out okay, which nothing wrong with that. I think when you go into this movie, you're gonna have a good time. Between the action, the music, the humor, there's just some really, really good things that they do in this film, and that's why I'm going to give it I wasn't sure. I was sure. Yeah, I felt like 5 stars when I came out. And so I am gonna go that bold, like 10 out of 10, because I really, really did enjoy it. Now, that doesn't mean it's ahead of everything else. I put it ahead of Megan, and I'm gonna be really, really trying to stay true to my letterbox list. Tetris at number 1, obviously. Super Mario Bros. Number 2, John Wick number 3, Renfield number 4, and Megan is number 5. So again, Renfield is in my top 5. I thoroughly liked it, and I was coming out of that theater on a high because I was laughing so much, and it's those tropey vampire rules that they played on in this film. So I feel very confident seeing it as my number 4 in my top 5 of the year so far, and we got lots of more movies to get through, so we'll see if that holds its position, if it nudges out. I'm tempted to go back and watch it again because I really enjoyed it so much, but I'm curious to see if it would drop my rating, but currently at this time, I'm giving it a full 10 out of 10 because I am being trying not to be biased, but I'm being honest that it was just a really funny freaking time. I enjoyed it. So yeah, aside from that, I think that is everything for this review. So go check it out if you are a fan of vampires. It's a good time. Actually, and two, we got some cool trailers as well because we got the Last Voyage of the Demeter on the big screen, and that trailer just dropped not too long ago. So seeing that on the big screen was very cool. What was the other thing that we got? No more Pope's Exorcist because that's now officially out. So I'm going to have to make a point of seeing that. But anyways, I digress. Until next time, everyone, thank you for tuning into this episode, Spoilers Review of Renfield, GeekVerse Podcast. I am Taylor, and I will see you in the search bar. Have a good one.